In 1988, DC Comics let fans call a phone number to vote on whether Robin lived or died. The majority chose death, so the Joker beat a child to death with a crowbar. That's how Batman became a father. Here's every child Bruce Wayne has ever taken in, and what happened to each one. Dick Grayson. Dick Grayson is the experiment. The first Robin, debuting in 1940, an 8-year-old circus acrobat who watches his parents get murdered by mobster Tony Zuko. Bruce sees this kid's world shatter and thinks, I know exactly what that feels like. So he takes him in. Here's the thing, Dick's origin is almost identical to Bruce's. Parents murdered, child alone, rage with nowhere to go. But one critical difference, Dick has Bruce, someone to channel that grief into something other than decades of lonely rooftop brooding, which raises the question nobody wants to answer. Did Bruce save this kid, or did he weaponize another child's trauma? The answer might be both. Dick outgrows Robin in 1984, becoming Nightwing, and their dynamic shifts into something messier. A father trying to maintain control over an adult son who doesn't need permission anymore. But here's what matters. Dick turns out fine. He's the most well-adjusted member of the entire Bat family, leads teams, maintains relationships, smiles on occasion. He's proof that Bruce's approach can produce a healthy person, and that success is what convinces Bruce to keep doing this, to keep taking in broken kids and putting capes on them. Whether that's inspiring or horrifying is up to you, but if Dick raises uncomfortable questions, wait until you meet the one child Bruce never raised at all, Helena Wayne. Helena Wayne is the only child on this list raised by both of her biological parents in something resembling a functional household, which, for a Batman story, is basically a fairy tale. On Earth 2, Bruce Wayne does something unthinkable. He retires. He marries Selina Kyle. They have a daughter, and for a while, everything is fine. No dead parents in an alley, no child soldiers in capes, just the family. A weird family where dad used to dress like a bat and mom used to steal diamonds, but a family nonetheless. Helena's origin is told in DC Superstars, chapter 17 in 1977, with her first physical appearance landing in All-Star Comics number 69 that same year. She grows up knowing exactly who her parents are, takes up the Robin mantle as a teenager, then evolves into the Huntress, blending both legacies into something new. Detective and outlaw, discipline and seduction, she's the bridge between two people who should never have worked together but somehow did. Here's where it gets bittersweet. After Crisis on Infinite Earths in 1985, Helena Wayne is erased, gone, replaced by Helena Bertinelli, a completely different character who just happens to share a first name. Later reboots bring her back in fragments, half restored, identity confused, never quite whole again. She's proof that Bruce Wayne could have been happy, and DC keeps deleting that proof, which tells you everything about what kind of story Batman is allowed to be. But if Helena represents the best-case scenario for Bruce's personal life, the next entry represents the absolute worst. A child who died because of him and came back furious about it, Jason Todd. Here's where Batman's parenting experiment produces its worst possible outcome. Jason Todd is a street kid from Crime Alley, caught stealing the tires off the Batmobile, and Bruce Wayne looks at this feral child and thinks, yeah, I can fix him. He could not fix him. Jason becomes the second Robin, but he's not Dick Grayson. He's angrier, more brutal, more willing to cross lines. And in 1988, DC Comics does something unprecedented. They let fans call a phone number to vote on whether this child lives or dies. By a margin of 72 votes, readers chose death. So the Joker beats a teenager to death with a crowbar. Bruce arrives too late, and that's it. That becomes Batman's defining failure as a father, not as a hero, as a dad. But Jason doesn't stay dead. He claws his way back through a combination of reality-altering cosmic nonsense and a Lazarus pit, and he comes home furious. He takes the name Red Hood, which is the Joker's old identity, because subtlety was never really Jason's thing. And he asks Bruce the one question that breaks the entire Batman philosophy wide open. Why won't you kill the man who murdered your own son? That's not a villain's question. That's a son's question. And Bruce has never had a good answer for it. Their entire relationship from that point forward is an argument in narrative form. Jason isn't fighting crime or fighting Batman. He's fighting for proof that his father loved him enough to avenge him. He never gets it, which is, not ideal. But if Jason represents what happens when Bruce's methods fail catastrophically, the next Robin represents what happens when someone actually chooses this life with their eyes open. Tim Drake. Every other Robin gets recruited. Bruce finds them, saves them, or inherits them. Tim Drake is the one who shows up at Batman's door and says, hey, you're broken and I'm the fix, which is, not how most parent-child relationships start. Here's the thing, Tim is a teenager watching the news after Jason Todd dies, and he notices Batman is getting more violent, more reckless, more unhinged. So what does this kid do? He reverse engineers Batman's identity by watching old footage of Dick Grayson's acrobatics, connects the dots to Nightwing, tracks Dick down, and essentially delivers a thesis statement. Batman needs a Robin or he's going to get himself killed. The fact that he's right is what makes it extraordinary. Unlike Dick or Jason, Tim isn't an orphan when he signs up. He has living parents, a normal life. Bruce isn't rescuing him from anything. Tim is rescuing Bruce. Their dynamic starts as two detectives working together rather than a father raising a son. Tim embodies the analytical side of Batman more than anyone else who's worn the cape, but then, because this is Gotham, Tim's mother gets killed. His father gets murdered. Bruce becomes the only family Tim has left, formalizing the adoption after tragedy does what tragedy always does in this franchise. Tim later becomes Red Robin, carving out his own identity the way Dick became Nightwing. But there's a bitter irony. The moment Damian Wayne shows up as the biological heir, Tim gets quietly pushed aside. The detective, Robin, the one who chose this life to save Batman, loses his seat at the table to a kid who shares Bruce's DNA. A lot of fans still haven't forgiven that, but if you think Tim's path into the Bat family was unconventional, wait until you hear about the girl who forced her way in by sabotaging her own father, Stephanie Brown. Stephanie Brown is the child Bruce Wayne failed most visibly, and the proof is in how little anyone seemed to care when she died. Here's the thing. Every other Robin gets recruited. Bruce sees their trauma, recognizes something in them, and extends an invitation. Stephanie? She built her own costume, created her own identity as Spoiler, and forced her way into Batman's world because her dad, the C-list villain Cluemaster, was hurting people and nobody else was going to stop him. Nobody asked her to do this. Nobody trained her. She just showed up. And Bruce's response was, essentially, to tolerate her presence without ever fully committing to her safety. When Tim Drake quits as Robin, Bruce makes Stephanie the first female Robin in mainstream continuity. Sounds like progress, but her tenure lasts about 5 minutes before Bruce fires her, withholds critical mission intel, and leaves her without backup. She triggers war games trying to prove herself, gets captured, gets tortured, and apparently dies. Now here's where the double standard becomes impossible to ignore. When Jason Todd dies, it haunts Bruce for decades. Memorial case, years of guilt, personality reshaped entirely. When Stephanie dies, no memorial case, no grief arc. The narrative barely flinches. Fans noticed. The women in Refrigerator's accusations were immediate, loud, and honestly earned. She survived, of course. Later revealed to have faked her death, Stephanie becomes Batgirl and eventually returns to the Spoiler identity. Her resilience is remarkable considering both Bruce and DC editorial treated her as disposable. She's the kid who was never given the same safety net as the boys, never mourned with the same intensity, and she succeeded anyway, which is either inspiring or damning depending on how generous you're feeling toward Bruce Wayne on any given Tuesday. But if Stephanie is the child, Bruce failed through inconsistency, wait until you hear about the one he didn't even know existed for 40 years. Terry McGinnis. Someone literally manufactured a new Batman. Not trained one, not inspired one, manufactured. Like a product off an assembly line, except the assembly line is nanotechnology and the product is a teenage boy who doesn't know his entire life is a lie. Here's the setup. Batman Beyond premieres in 1999, and Terry McGinnis is presented as exactly what he appears to be, a former juvenile delinquent whose father gets murdered by corporate scumbag Derek Powers. Terry stumbles onto the Batcave, steals a high-tech suit, and Bruce Wayne reluctantly mentors him. Clean successor story. Old Knight passes the torch. Then Justice League Unlimited drops the epilogue episode like a bomb on the entire premise. Turns out, Amanda Waller orchestrated Project Batman Beyond. The plan? Use nanotechnology to overwrite Warren McGinnis's reproductive DNA with Bruce Wayne's during a routine flu shot. Warren walks in thinking he's getting vaccinated, walks out as a genetic vessel for someone else's child. Terry is born a year later. Genetically, biologically, in every measurable way, Bruce Wayne's son, which is, not ideal. But here's where it gets genuinely disturbing. Waller understood that Batman wasn't made by DNA alone. He was made by trauma. So the original plan included hiring an assassin to murder Terry's parents in front of him, replicating Crime Alley beat for beat. The assassin refused, but the intent was always there. Someone looked at Bruce Wayne's worst night and said, let's do that again, on purpose, to a child. And yet Terry learns the truth and chooses Bruce as his father anyway. Not because nanomachines made him, because the mentorship, the years of shared purpose mean more than engineered genetics. Nature built the body. Choice built the bond. Within the DCAU, this is the most philosophically loaded parent-child origin in the entire Bat family. It asks whether you can manufacture destiny and answers with a firm no. But if you think a genetically engineered successor is a rough origin story, wait until you meet the girl who was raised without language so she could become the perfect weapon. Cassandra Cain. Cassandra Cain isn't your typical Bat-child. She bursts onto the scene in 1999 during No Man's Land as a mute teenage girl who's basically the deadliest courier in Gotham. But here's the twist. Cassandra is the daughter of David Cain, one of the deadliest assassins alive, and Lady Shiva, the world's top martial artist. Her dad intentionally raised her without ever teaching her to speak, because he wanted her to read body movements as her first language. Sounds like a killer superpower? It is, but it also left her speech and literacy development almost completely stunted. So yes, Cassandra is essentially born into being the ultimate fighter, capable of predicting and countering moves before they even start. But while her abilities outmatch Bruce Wayne's, her understanding of the world is still fragile. After her first kill, she breaks down, horrified by what she's done, and runs away from the life she was designed for. When she finally lands in Gotham, Bruce and Barbara Gordon see her raw desire to protect others, not destroy. Rather than teaching her how to fight, they teach her how to be human, how to talk, read, and find a moral compass. She takes on the mantle of Batgirl with Bruce's full blessing, becoming the first Batgirl to get her own ongoing series in 2000. Later, she operates under the codename Orphan before reclaiming Batgirl's legacy entirely. Here's where it gets truly fascinating. Cassandra's relationship with Bruce flips the usual Robin formula upside down. She arrives already more dangerous than him physically, but broken emotionally. Instead of Bruce teaching her to fight, he teaches her how to be a person with a family and values. Batman becomes less the trauma exploiter here, and more the trauma healer. It's Batman at his most redemptive, a warrior raised in violence, saved by the symbol. But if you think that's intense, wait until you hear about Damian Wayne. Damian Wayne. Every other child on this list chose Bruce, or Bruce chose them. Damian is the exception. He was engineered in a laboratory, raised in a League of Assassins compound, trained to kill before he could read, and then dropped on Bruce's doorstep like a grenade with a birth certificate. Grant Morrison canonized Damian in Batman 655 in 2006, and this kid arrives in Gotham at 10 years old, already a fully formed child soldier. Violent, arrogant, convinced he's the rightful heir to everything Batman represents. His first instinct upon meeting Tim Drake is to try and kill him, which is, not ideal. Here's what makes Damian the ultimate test of everything Bruce believes. Every other Robin, Bruce gets to shape from early on. Damian arrives pre-shaped by his greatest enemies. Talia didn't just give Bruce a son. She gave him a weapon pointed directly at his own ideology. A child whose nature was engineered for assassination, dropped into the home of a man who refuses to kill. And slowly, painfully, nurture wins. Damian evolves from entitled killer to self-sacrificing hero. He earns the Robin mantle not through bloodline, but through growth. Then he dies. Batman Incorporated, 8/2013, killed by his own adult clone. And Bruce's response is the single most extreme act of paternal love in comics history. He builds the Hellbat armor, invades Apokolips, and fights through an entire planet of gods to bring his son back. And that's the answer this entire video has been building toward. Blood doesn't make you Batman's real son. Dick, Jason, Tim, Stephanie, Cassandra, Terry, Damian, they all have equal claim. Because Bruce Wayne is a deeply imperfect father whose repeated attempts to break the cycle of violence accidentally created a dynasty. Every single one of these kids arrived broken, and Bruce, himself still broken, tried to give them something better. Sometimes he succeeded, sometimes he failed catastrophically, but he never stopped trying. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.